going to call this meeting to order, and we have the minutes from our March 14th meeting.
I would move that we approve the minutes from the March 14th meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on, we have warrants 20 and 20P, the payroll.
All right, I'll move that we approve warrants 20 and 20P.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, under warrant 20, the total is $24,316.55. And of that, there's money going to fuel for the highway department, quite a few payroll transfers and retirement deposits, the monthly sheriff's bill, and the big item this week is the passive insurance, the VLCT program where we have the town's insurance, and that is $13,158. So, what would you like to do? All those in favor, or any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on, do we have Jean Newell going to talk to us about the listers, and the West Dummerston Fire Department is going to speak. Anybody else have any comments they'd like to make right now? Okay, all right. Jean?
Well, would you like me to let you know that we need a lister very badly,
Okay,
since Charlotte has decided not to run because she's a busy, busy girl. And we presently have about 60 to 70 parcels that need to be visited, plus all the in-house work that needs to be done on the computer, plus our current use, plus the HS 122s that come in, which is the homesteads. And since I'm the only one there, and I understand Doug will be back in, next week, but that doesn't mean that he'll be able to go out into the field. So we really need someone that will be able to go out and to learn to be a lister. And the next 4 months is a very busy time for listers. It's about 10 hours a week at least. That doesn't always count everything that happens. There may be more because we may have more people that we need to see besides what I've got. I've got the black book updated, but there may be more.
so if we talked earlier today, and we did, I was going to volunteer a couple other members of the select board to help you. But we had a very good candidate that we interviewed before our meeting began today that we're going to discuss later in our meeting. So we might have someone to fill that empty seat.
That would be great.
Yeah, because when you talk, we listen.
Well, I tried to do it very diplomatically and.
You've done a great job.
Get it
Yeah.
ready for.
Right, it's an
the
important
coming months.
position, and it, yes, definitely needs to be filled.
Pardon?
Yes, it's an important position.
Yes.
And needs to be filled.
Yes.
So we're going to do our best. If you stick around, I think you'll go home happy.
I'm gonna retire soon.
You got to hang in there for a little while.
Stick with us.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Do you want, can we talk, or do you want to talk about Roger,
Yeah,
the
I
current
was hoping
zoning
to do that.
administrator, though I talked to him and I talked to Jean about giving him potentially 4 extra hours a week, which is what he thinks he has available. That's really all the extra time he has. Knowing he'll probably put a little zoning aside, but if we just agree, if we want to agree to give him the 4 extra hours, he can either participate. He can't do, because he's not a town resident, there's a few things he
Right.
can't do. However, he can be, as the zoning administrator, it's good for him to get out in the field. He can be someone to go out.
A
with
second
you
set of eyes on a property
and
and feet and
Or-
sounding board for Gene.
Right, and hopefully
Measure.
we'll have that second lister, but Roger can be out there at least to have his input. on-
Yeah, it's not a bad
And then it's
thing.
also just a
Yeah.
person to travel with them too, because they're not out just, we don't want to just, we never send one person out alone anyway, but we want more than one person, so I don't know if we want to, I don't think we really need a motion, if we could just agree that we're gonna offer him 4 extra hours a week, and he may or may not use all those. Does that sound reasonable, or should we?
Let's have a motion that we ask Roger to help out as needed.
All right.
As he's available.
Up to agree to pay him up to
Yeah.
additional 4 hours a week.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Okay, any more discussion? And of course, Doug is an elected, the listers are usually elected, so if he is feeling better and comes back, then we do appoint another lister later this evening, then we'll have our 3 listers. But if they still need some help, then,
Of the kind that Roger can offer
Right.
then-
And
as
he-
a non-resident.
Right.
Yeah.
And he may put no hours in, but it's, at least we have it
He's-
available.
At least he's there.
We've had some changes since I talked to him today, so, yeah.
And I would also like to offer that, I talked with Hugh and Zeke when they were in the office earlier, that because I am familiar with all the programs and the technical things that have to be done in the office, I'm willing to help if needed, if you still need somebody, while Jean is training
A new person.
the new person. I'm willing to do that with your approval, so.
Sure.
Okay. So, do we need to then appoint Charlotte temporarily, or is this just
Let's have a friendly amendment to add Charlotte to the list.
to that list?
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with
Okay. Then any more discussion? All those in favor?
you.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, good. Great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, let's see. Well, I think we're going to have someone from the volunteer fire department come soon. So let's just skip down to the road foreman report. And we've got some bids on the Stickney Brook structure that needs to be done this summer. And we have bids from Jason Evans Construction, A.S. Clark, Renault Brothers, and Daniels Construction. Do you want me to list the amounts, or do you have that? Okay, Jason Evans Construction was $147,750. A.S. Clark is $151,233. Renault Brothers, $196,000. And Daniels Construction, $229,550. So what would you like to do?
Well, didn't Lee have input on this? I mean, that's what we would want to know, right? Is what Lee's input was?
Yep.
Well, I'll make the motion that, then we'll have the discussion. I'll make the motion that we award the contract for the Stickney Brook Bridge to Evans Construction for $147,750.
Okay,
I'll second that, so we can have discussion.
okay,
Okay.
all right. So that's what Lee was thinking also.
And so what else did he say? I mean, it's the lowest bid. Is that why he went with it? Or does he, have experience with Jason and feels that?
I talked to him today, 'cause, I'll be honest with you, my initial thought process was, we've had A.S. Clark do bridges for us before, and I thought for the $3,500 wasn't enough to switch, because I really thought he did a good job down on Tucker Reed Bridge, and that was my going into thought process. And then talking with Lee today, I guess Evans has done some work for us, road work, He's never built a bridge for the town, and I haven't seen, I think he has done a smaller bridge years ago for someone, but Lee, in his discussions with Evans, feels that, he has the capability in the, he can do the job, and he can do the job right, so,
Good.
I guess without, going too much further, I think they're both local constructions. The bids were pretty close.
Yeah.
I had my initial thoughts on it, but after talking to Lee, he is comfortable with how the process is going to go. Then the key being, we've already had the engineering done.
Right, that's what I wanted to.
And then
Yeah.
the next thing that I was kind of concerned with was the concrete itself, but there's the concrete will be tested, incrementally, just like it was before. So, because Evans is going to do the concrete work himself, is what I was told.
Oh.
So Lee essentially convinced me that, we
Good.
could go with Evans Construction.
Well, I hope you challenged him a little bit. Yeah, good. I would trust
Okay.
Lee's judgment
Okay.
on it. And
Yeah, I
appreciate-
defer to Lee's expertise on this, so.
I appreciate your involvement.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All set? All those in favor of awarding the Stickney Brook structure to Jason Evans Construction?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, I'll let Jason Evans know. And I'll let Lee know. Okay. Let's see, we have to approve let's see, where the heck did it go? The compliance.
V-Trans certificate of compliance?
Yep. What would you like to do with that?
I would move that we approve the V-Trans certificate of compliance.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion?
So do you want to tell us about it, or?
Sure. This is essentially, we're certifying that we are in compliance with the codes and standards for the Vermont Agency of Transportation sets for roads and bridges. And I sent around the details of that from 2013. So we just have, every year we have to confirm that we're following the rules. So we have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so let's do that. And,
We all need to sign it?
yes, we have this too. Okay, one last thing. Curb cut on Rice Farm Road. What would you like to do with that? This is the Nature Conservancy. Looks like they're doing enlarging a parking area. And they looked at this with Lee. They have a diagram here. They have a proposed swale and ditching, and that's about it. They need official approval. And so,
I'll make a motion that we approve the curb cut.
I'll second the motion.
okay, any discussion?
Zeke?
Yes.
Lou Sorensen. I recall several years ago, the Nature Conservancy came before the DRB for a permit for that parking area and access, and I recall that there were conditions on it. So whoever is doing the detail on it might look at that permit to see what the conditions were in compliance.
Okay, we could ask Roger to do that. Roger's pretty thorough. So, we could approve this subject to Roger making sure that it's complies with the conditions. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
that sounds good.
great.
So is that a friendly amendment?
Yes, it is.
To the
Yep.
motion?
Good, thank you.
That's great, thanks.
All right, any more discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so, let's see, so this crowd is here for the curb cut, or? No! We have one more item of business, and then we're going to discuss what I think most of you are here for, and that is the fire department. At town meeting, voters approved spending up to $326,000 for a new fire truck. And that was approved, and we have to sign some papers and approve it and get the ball rolling so they can actually place the order for the truck. And we have the paperwork here. And it's actually going to be $319,000 is what, that's going to come out of our capital fund. So, do you want to speak to this? Anyone from the fire department want to speak to this?
Not unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for the fire department? These are essentially an agreement to purchase the truck as listed in the specs. It would be, paid for upon delivery, and just the details of buying a fire truck.
So Rick, where does the fire truck come from?
Florida.
It
It's
comes-
built in Florida from Emergency One
Uh-huh.
company that builds that. So it'll be coming from there.
So it's brand
That's a
spanking.
local dealer from Burlington, Vermont that we've dealt with. He one's out of Burlington, but they build a fire truck in Florida.
I see. So it's brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new truck.
And you got to sort of figure out what kind of, I imagine there were choices on features.
Yes, we kept it the same as the trucks we have today for training purposes and everything else and money costs. That's what we can work with in our town, so we kept it within budget.
Uh-huh. And weight-wise? Covered range.
Yes, it's just a pump and not a tanker. 1,000 gallons of water.
Is
Okay.
it gonna be red?
Yes, it's gonna be red.
You.
So we're approving just the bid on them so they can put it out, but the financing, we won't do that because the treasurer can't do that till about 6 weeks before July 1st, so we'll probably have to, so we're just approving
The
the
go-ahead.
specs so they can get it
So we
going.
can order it and can't take delivery until,
Right, and then
Yes.
we'll start getting she can't really get a quote for the interest rates and things till about 6 weeks prior.
Okay.
So sometime mid-May,
yep,
we'll get the loan sorted out, and where we're gonna go with that.
very well.
And then from there, we'll have to agree.
So if we sign this tonight, or you'll be able to put the order in,
Yes,
and when do you anticipate getting delivery?
I would like it here before Christmas, be a Christmas present. It should hopefully be here in December,
Okay.
late 2018.
Okay.
And where will this fire truck live, Rick?
It's gonna be at the West Station,
At the West Station?
yes,
Fits in the garage? and
yes. Did you two move over to the center?
Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion yet?
What is the motion is to approve the specs of the fire truck?
Let's see.
I'm not,
I would say, this is an agreement to go ahead and build this truck. And that we agree to the price of $319,000, and that we will pay upon receipt of the truck.
so that's the motion.
Yeah.
I'll second your motion.
Okay. Do you need me to
Oh,
repeat
Mario,
that?
you did such a good job.
We'll have to play the tape back. Okay. All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Hi,
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have approved the,
thanks for all your work, Rick. I know
Appreciate it,
it's,
thank you.
yeah,
okay.
not,
We appreciate it.
yeah, not
That's for all of us.
a small job to choose a fire truck. A lot goes into it, yeah.
Good. Right, and these are very detailed specs, so everything is gone over, so. And you took quite a while to do this, so it just wasn't a rush job. You've been working on this
You
for
have to
quite a
really know
while.
what you want, and what's best for our town.
Yeah.
Can we have a Christmas parade?
That's up to you if you give the permit.
I think we could probably have a motion right now. Permit for parade.
This is international. Yes.
Okay, all right, so now, let's see, let's move on to the Village Sanitation Pilot Study presentation. And this is Wyndham Regional Commission and the Rich Earth Institute. And,
We need to set up a screen and a projector.
okay, do we have, I think there are concessions in the lobby that we want to,
I can set things up.
and we'll let you go ahead.
It won't take us long. I mean,
Okay,
but
do you mind if we keep doing a little business while you're setting up?
we just have to decide where you want the screen and,
Well, you can put the screen here and we'll move our seats so that we're facing
I'll
it.
just take a little nap or something.
we need a table though, that's the thing, so.
You what?
Can we just use this
Sure.
table to put the
Yeah.
old one and projector and screen on, or should we open a new?
Yeah, so
tab?
Rachel, why don't you come around here and we'll continue our business while you're setting up.
Okay.
Because then we can not meet longer afterwards, right?
Right, got 10 minutes. Okay, so we have, if we're going to. Yep.
Oh, yeah, I didn't sign the warrants.
Oh, I need to do that.
All right, so we've done that. Is there anything on the correspondence for information that you'd like to discuss?
Not really. The Vermont A&R Act 250 Carpenter Road subdivision, what, can you say what that is?
Let's see, the carpenter, Ken Carpenter,
Yeah,
when he leased what became the gravel pit there, part of it was, maybe, do you remember this, Lou Sorensen? That he was going to, he owned other property on Carpenter Road, and that was to be subdivided for his daughters. And they are, this was a very lengthy process to complete the subdivision. There were archaeological studies, and they have to pay to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Fund for mitigating the use of agricultural lands, and they have to preserve certain agricultural lands in this subdivision for use as agricultural land in perpetuity. So it was a very lengthy process, and the Agency of Natural Resources has finally signed off on a permit for that.
okay, great. Thank you.
So anything else under correspondence for information?
Sure you wanted to show me?
Is anybody going to this Southern Vermont Economic Development Summit? Do we need to, is it something that the select board usually goes to, or is,
No, this is kind of a new thing. I don't
Okay.
think.
So we had never paid into that before, from what I understood from town meeting, right?
Okay. Right, but those meetings are, of course, open to anyone. So if you're looking for something to do on that Memorial Day weekend,
okay.
okay. Let's see. We have appointments and reappointments. Let's let Jean head home early if she wants. We interviewed Michael Silverman earlier today. He'd like to become a lister. He seemed, I don't want to prejudice anyone, but he seemed eminently qualified to be a lister. And he certainly was willing to take on the job and has a flexible schedule.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we would appoint Michael Silverman to the position of, to the empty position of lister.
I'll second.
Okay, you have a second
Vacant
and
is
third
probably
on that.
Vacant, yes.
Okay, any discussion?
Just till, this goes till town meeting next year.
Yeah.
This point.
And so listers serve for 3 years.
So that will, he will be appointed until March.
Yes.
Correct.
And
Town
then
meeting, yes.
Yes.
if he'd like to
And-
continue, then he'd take out a petition and run.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
When you call him, will you ask him?
We haven't voted yet.
He's not a lister yet. You have to-
Oh, okay.
We haven't voted.
Don't you jump in the gun.
I already voted.
You have to respect the democratic process here. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Great.
so now he's a
So
lister.
exciting.
When you do call him, will you be giving him a specific date to come into the office?
Well, he said he was going to be, he needed to be away next week.
Right.
But
Yes.
I'll tell him to get there as soon as possible.
To be in touch with Jean.
Get in
Yeah,
touch
and
with you.
coordinate with you,
Great.
your schedule. Yep,
Okay.
okay, I'm going as
Because
soon as
I would like to
possible.
start making appointments.
Yes, I'll ask him to get in touch with you before he goes. He's
That's
leaving
great.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
later this week, so I'll ask him to get in touch with you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And you have my phone number and my email. Okay.
Okay. I'll give him your address, I'll have him drive over.
Pardon?
I'll give him your address and have him drive over later
Hey,
tonight.
that's great too.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Okay. How are you guys doing?
We're ready to roll.
All right, shall we, all right, so we're going to find a seat.
Yeah.
We could go have a beer, right? And then,
Oh, now you see it.
I don't think we need a chair. I think we stand up. So we don't.
we'll just
Yeah. There's 2 weeks left of that. I wonder if we could, Is it good? Is that okay? I think it's good.
great.
Everybody see that okay? Yeah? That's it, that's the bottom. If that's big enough, we can just go on. We don't want to. Takes time. So, thank you for having us out here in Dummerston. We're really thrilled to be here. I'm Kim Nace, the Executive Director, Founding Director of the Rich Earth Institute. And Phoebe Gooding is with me. She's my Executive Assistant. And this is Emily Davis from the Wyndham Regional Commission. And we are collaborating with the Regional Commission on a village sanitation pilot study, which we call the VSPS. So that's what we're here to talk to you about tonight. And I'm going to start with giving you sort of an overview of the Rich Earth Institute. How many of you have seen what the Rich Earth Institute is doing? Okay, how many of you have actually seen our PowerPoint before? Okay, all right, great. So I don't want to, repeat myself or anything, but obviously we're here with a good new audience. So, Abe, my co-founder, just got back from Switzerland, and I just want to tell you all this because we're very proud of what we have accomplished in 7 years here in Vermont. It was an invitation-only conference about the future of off-grid urban water management. And we've really established ourselves as one of the key projects in the world doing something new with sanitation. And so I'm very, very proud of what's happening with us. And let's just give it a start here with, we're going to give you an overview of our vision and what we've accomplished. So We're gonna start with this. This is the facility, this is the appliance that we all have in our homes, we all have it in our bathroom, and it's in need of a makeover. That's, this is a really old piece of equipment, we all have it, it's water-based, and we're re-landing rockets that go to the moon, and we have these little things in our pocket that we can look at each other with, and this needs a makeover. So even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has put a lot of money into reinventing this toilet. And I've had the privilege of going to a couple conferences where people are gathered around who are designing and thinking about, where are we going to go from where we are with sanitation to where we need to be in 50 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Phoebe, and she's going to, something happened to that word. It's supposed to, what is that? That's never happened before.
It's supposed to say, Alex, you've seen it, has that?
I don't know what that says, I've never seen it do that before.
That's right, let's not,
We're not gonna worry about it.
that's on it.
You go.
So anyway, we'll just keep going. So basically, you saw the toilet. You're combining whatever it is, like 1.5 gallons, possibly to 3 gallons of water, to about a cup of urine flush, and then it goes into what is then called wastewater. So this just is, this diagram just shows like what is wastewater. So on average per day, per person, we use about 227 liters of water in our household. So in cooking and laundry and washing hands and showering, etc. And also in the toilet, to what is this smaller percentage of 1.5, just over 1.5 liters a day of human waste. And we have this color coded because you can see that the urine is yellow and the feces is brown, and it just represents that we produce more urine daily than we produce in feces. So that gets mixed in with water in your house. It's flushed and it becomes contaminated and it becomes wastewater at that point. So the characteristics of human waste is for wet mass to dry mass. So yeah, some of these are just getting, I think I have to apologize that with these slides aren't coming through exactly because of possibly with the projector. So this is, oh yeah, it doesn't even say it on here actually. Okay, I'm just gonna go back a little bit. Okay. So this is how many, so this is,
Wet mass and dry mass.
yeah, I was just thinking about this down here, of urine and feces per kilogram and per person. So that is how much is produced per year. So annual, that's the word I was missing. So kilograms per person, you can see that in wet and dry, we produce more urine annually than we produce feces. Okay?
Yeah, we dehydrate it. It's really a surprise
Mm-hmm.
to people that we have that much solid in our urine.
Okay, so the nutrients in human waste here, we produce about 4,000 grams of nitrogen per person annually in our urine, and about 365 grams per person annually of phosphorus in our urine. So in feces, you can see it's less. So this is all part of why urine is the low-hanging fruit for us to work with, because there are more nutrients in urine. We produce more of it. It's also easier to work with. It's just safer to work with and safer to handle than feces. So moving on, this is just to show you sources of nutrients in wastewater. So nitrogen, urine has more sources of, or it has more nutrients in it than feces does. So you can see in nitrogen and phosphorus. In urine, it has about 75% of nitrogen and 55% of phosphorus. Do you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, if you completely decouple human waste from the waste stream, then you're going to be able to get this much nitrogen and phosphorus out, and urine has the majority of it. So that's why we've we've color coded that so you can see what wastewater is made out of.
Am I gonna keep going?
I'll go ahead if you want me to.
If you want.
Okay, all right, so in your community, this is what happens to your wastewater. In Brattleboro and in all the other places where you have centralized wastewater treatment, it goes to a centralized facility and lots of things happen there. We cook it, we do primary, secondary, tertiary treatment that can clean up the wastewater before we put it into rivers. That's not what you live with here in Dummerston. In fact, there's no wastewater treatment facility in Dummerston. Everybody has a septic system. This is a basic drawing of what a septic system is. It's surprising how many people don't really know what these are or how they work, but there's a tank that comes out of your house, everything goes into there, and then it gets dispersed into a leach field. The liquids come to the top and they get dispersed out there. So probably everybody here is probably pretty familiar with what that system is all about. So one of the reasons why it's important for us to have this conversation about what we're doing here at the Village Sanitation Project is that these systems were designed to keep everybody safe and to keep us pathogen free and so that we don't have diseases. It's disease prevention. But the nutrients themselves, nitrogen and phosphorus, they do leach out of a leach field. They go down into the groundwaters and they often go into surface waters as well. So, for example, Cape Cod, the estuaries in Cape Cod are very polluted. They're having a lot of difficulties with eutrophication and algae blooms. And this can be caused by septic systems. It's very linked. It's very easy to link that. The Great Bay has done a lot of studies with the EPA and they show that a certain percentage of these nutrient pollutions is coming from our septics that are leaking. Sometimes it can take as long as 30 years for these nutrients to actually move through to get to the groundwater, but they do eventually go in that direction. So here's a map that looks different in different lighting, but anyway, that's the number. We've got about 15, we have a lot of impaired waterways in the United States that have been impaired because of nutrient pollution. Some of the nutrient pollution is from farm runoff. We all have been paying good attention to what's going on in the state with our new regulations and our new water bill to work with farming communities around the amount of fertilizer that they produce in the runoff. But also, a lot of it still comes from human waste. It's not something that we take off the table as we try to solve the nutrient problem. Human waste is an important consideration. This is a picture from Long Island Sound in 2015. Along the Connecticut River, we discharge from the Brattleboro treatment plant about 450 pounds of nitrogen a day. Along the whole Connecticut River, it's about 1,700 pounds daily of nitrogen that's coming just from the Vermont side, from the treatment plants. That's a lot. And then you have all of our villages like this, and it's going into the rivers as well. It's making a contribution. So this is pretty serious, and these are happening more and more, these amazing fish kills. The fish can't survive in the algae, and they have to close beaches a lot in Long Island Sound in the summer now. So if you know people that live down there, they can confirm that for you, that this is a growing concern. So Emily, do you want to jump in here?
Sure, yeah.
We're sharing this.
Yeah, I know, it's a little trio. So why this is important, and again, why I think the Wyndham Regional Commission is getting involved with this work and why we're so interested in pursuing this pilot project with the Rich Earth Institute is because, we are interested in these regional sources, non-point sources of nutrient contamination into our waterways. And this is especially relevant because back in 2015, Vermont passed Act 64, which is the Vermont Clean Water Act, and that's what Kim was just referencing. And a large source of nutrient contamination in our waterways is agriculture currently, but what Vermont's trying to propose right now, what the state is really working on is, and what the bill was called when it was passed was the all-in approach to water quality. So the state's acknowledging that in order to remedy our water quality impairments that we are seeing statewide and in rivers like the West River and certainly the Connecticut River, is this all-in approach. So it's not quite enough to just look at agriculture, we also have to look at other land uses that we have, and certainly land uses within our villages. Some sources of point and non-point contamination,
different things again relating to development. It's a little funny to see here, but we're looking at runoff from impervious surfaces. We're looking at sediment contamination from our roads. These are just sorts of the things that Act 64 is really looking at, is this comprehensive view of what our
non-point sources are. And then again, it gets into this idea of nutrient management, is that nitrogen and phosphorus are the two nutrients that really are contributing to water quality impairments via this process called eutrophication. Is eutrophication super weird? Should we break that down for anybody in the audience? Yes, okay. So eutrophication is a system by which plants use nitrogen and phosphorus to grow. Those are its nutrients. That's the stuff that's being artificially applied on a mass scale to our farms. So when that enters the waterways, it creates a nutrient imbalance in our water system, and plants like algae, this is a picture of blue-green algae, which got a lot of airtime last summer and in recent years in Lake Champlain, and really was the impetus for passing the Vermont Clean Water Act. That algae, and it can take the form of other plant material too, it tends to have these blooms. So you heard on the radio and VPR was talking about these big algae blooms. When that happens, their little bodies eventually die once all of the nutrients are consumed, and when their bodies die, they actually take oxygen out of the water to decompose. It's part of their decomposition process. And when their bodies die, not only do they take oxygen out of the water, but the leftover material from their decomposition is toxic to a lot of our natural and native marine and water life. So you create conditions where there's no oxygen for the ecosystem that's there, and you're entering toxins into the system. So that's when you get these dead zones and the kill zones, and that's what results in those big fish die-offs. Okay?
Yep.
So it's relevant, big problems.
Or let's use new kinds of toilets and collect urine for recycling. We can turn urine into a fertilizer and grow crops with it. Each day, every person has enough urine to fertilize wheat to grow a loaf of bread. So essentially, when you're flushing the toilet every day with your urine, you're flushing a loaf of bread down the toilet every day. What we have is a broken nutrient cycle. The nutrient cycle is so important in nature, it should be closed. We need it to stay complete. And we've got these great drawings from Joe Jenkins, who's the author of the Humanure Handbook, which has been translated into about 15 languages, and he is a real icon in the world of ecological sanitation. So what we have here is a lot of energy expended to create chemical fertilizers. To mine phosphorus is very, very expensive. It's mostly found in Morocco. It's very volatile in terms of pricing and stability for the long haul. And we use the Haber-Bosch process to pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere, which is also very energy intensive, and we also have to transport these chemical fertilizers a long distance. So we do that. We take the fertilizers to the farm, we grow food, and then we eat the food. And these nutrients are just following along in this cycle. Nothing changes form. Everything that you eat comes out of you. Unless you're a small child growing or somebody getting smaller, everything comes out in the same quantity. So we have these nutrients that we excrete, and then we create a pollution out of them, which, what they really want to do is go back to the soils. And that's what we envision at the Rich Earth Institute. We want to complete the nutrient cycle. We create a fertilizer, we eliminate a waste, and that's kind of when we think about it, 40, 50 years ago, paper, glass, tin, all those things, we used to throw them away. Then the habit of recycling now is just, it's a habit now. So the same thing may happen in the future with our, quote, human waste. So the Rich Earth has the first community scale project in the United States. We do have some friends over on the New Hampshire seacoast who have started. We have, it's called P Local, and they have eight families who are involved, and they are taking their urine to a farm as well. And so they're a replication and outreach project.
Maybe I'll jump in here a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just we'll just switch it up a little.
Go ahead.
Keep you all awake. So this is how we do it. I'll just break this down somewhat quickly, but what we do at Rich Earth is we collect, transport, treat, and apply urine. And the way we do it is, some people collect at home in cubies like this, and they bring it to our depot on Bird Street in Brattleboro, right downtown Brattleboro. Some people have toilets installed in their homes. This is a urine diverting composting toilet, and it might be kind of hard to see in this light, But this is the front part of the bowl is for the urine, and that's diverted this way. The composting, the feces is here, and it goes into a dry composting bin. And this is actually Kim's toilet in her house. So some people in our program are collecting in their homes this way. And that urine from her house, this is still Kim's house here actually, and her toilet's like on this side. And the tank is filled from a hose that runs into the tank. And septic partners at Best Septic that we've been working with for a few years come around and they just pump it up into their trucks and they transport it. What we do though is
I'm sorry, are they pumping out just the solids or are they pumping out?
just the urine.
Okay, just the urine.
Yeah.
So they set their truck up just for that and no
They
other-
do.
So they have one designated for just urine.
Well, I think they'll clean their tank for us
Okay.
actually before they come. They clean their tank so it is designated urine only.
Okay.
And it's pumped into their tank and then they transport it to the field for us. But and that's where we treat it. So we do have to treat it. Do you have another question?
I do. So I'm just curious questions more than anything. So do they fill that one truck then when they're done with that day of or do you know the gallons of that or just curious?
Yeah, they have a 3,000 gallon or 300 gallon tank.
Yeah.
This is a 275 gallon tank that I have by my house. But we are averaging about 7,000 gallons a year that we're recycling from over 125 people who are involved. So we do many, we do this. Some people have 55 gallon barrels and we pump those out in the spring and in the fall. So some people have 2 or 3 of those at their home and they're collecting all of their urine to get to the farms. And you might want to tell them who we're working with our farmers.
Yeah, so we have 2 farmers. We work with Fairwinds Farm and also Whetstone Valley Farm. So we treat the raw urine after it's been transported and we have a permit to do that. It becomes, after we treat it, it does become a Class A sanitized status. So we treat the urine and our permit is really actually for our mobile pasteurization unit. And this is a picture of that, of one of our versions of our pasteurization unit. So then we transport it and apply it. And you saw the picture previous of one of the tractors of them going through the field with the applicator actually applying urine. These pictures here from field trials that we did in 2012, and you can see that this strip here was the sanitized urine. This is, I think, no urine. This is, one of these is like synthetic fertilizer, and maybe that's it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that the urine versus no urine, you can see the difference here. And then you can also see to the synthetic fertilizer. So we've expanded our research and we are working with partners at the University of Michigan and the University at Buffalo and New Water Resources, and we're all part of a grant with the National Science Foundation. And we are exploring these new urine treatment technologies, risk assessment, and public perception. And maybe Kim, you want to go forward, or you want to talk about the all-in approach?
You know, I actually already talked about this.
Okay, yeah. The all-in approach and the Clean Water Act, if you wanted to touch on any of it.
No, I think I covered it.
Okay.
We can move along in the interest of time.
Sure. Do you want to jump in? Okay.
So these are what some of the new kinds of toilets look like. This is a urine diverting flush toilet. Urine diverting toilets can come in a dry composting system or as this variety is coming out. We're very excited at the Rich Earth because the design of toilets is really a hot topic now with people working on this around the world, and our partners over in Switzerland have told us that in June they're expecting to release some really great new designs, and they think it might be a game changer. So that's June. That's really, really soon. And we've been thinking about this for a lot of years. So this is a Swedish version called the Dubbletten, and we have a German version over at our research center called a Vostman. So we're trying all these different ones out. There is not an American company yet making them. They're waiting to see if the game changes, and they need to have us manufacture and sell 5,000 a month in order for them to get into the whole business of this. But it could happen. It could happen, and we know that some new versions are going to come out. Until then, we'll just bring them from Europe, where they're a little ahead of us. What could happen if we used urine diversion throughout the United States? We use currently 1.2 trillion gallons of water to flush toilets. So in the terms of the water conservation piece of this, it's enormous. 960 billion gallons of potable, drinkable water is used. Water that's been treated to drinking standards goes in our toilets, and we pollute it, immediately. So that's not as big of an issue in water-rich New England. We have quite a bit of water here, but out in the West Coast and the Midwest and some places, that Cape Town, for example, you've heard maybe, they're running out of water quickly. So that's a very critical reason to be doing this work. Also, we could replace 9 billion pounds of synthetic fertilizer. If we could collect all the urine in the United States and recycle it, that's how much fertilizer we could collect and offset. Another reason why it's really important to talk about this and work on this now is that our infrastructure in 1972, the Clean Water Act was passed, the federal one, and that's when we started doing all these centralized systems. I mean, we figured out that our lakes and rivers were very polluted at the time. So centralized systems got a real boost of funding back in 1972. But those systems are all now, it's 2018, right? These systems are very old, they're falling apart, and we need almost $300 billion in capital investment just to replace what we have in wastewater and water infrastructure to keep it to the level it is. But this is the time when we should introduce innovation, because actually people in the industry know that this is a dead end, that the wastewater, you can only get, now we want to talk about removing pharmaceuticals. Now we want to talk about removing heavy metals, and we need to keep removing more and more and taking that wastewater and cleaning it up more and more for our environment, and it's just more and more costly. So people are really looking at a lot of alternatives. One of the things that we didn't touch on in this PowerPoint, which I just want to let you all know, is that we've been funded by the EPA, the USDA, the Water Environment Research Foundation, and now the National Science Foundation. And we have completed a 2.5-year study about the pharmaceuticals. This is a question that people ask every presentation. What happens to the drugs we take and it goes into our urine? Well, indeed, it does go into our urine. And by separating the urine out, we actually have the opportunity to treat and remove it there. When we send human waste down to, and when we dilute it, it makes it even harder and harder to get those pharmaceuticals out. So our team grew lettuce and carrots out at a plot in Westminster, and we worked with the University of Michigan and the University of Buffalo. They did our chemical and our biological analysis, and we studied 16 chemical analytes that come at the end of a water treatment plant. And in parts per billion, we were analyzing these tissue samples from the carrots and lettuce. And I can give you a quick analogy of what the results were. For the lettuce, if you ate a pound of lettuce grown with urine from this sample of urine that we had a large public sample, it had all these drugs in it. If you ate a pound a day every day for 2,000 years, you would get the equivalent caffeine as 1 cup of coffee. That's how much of the caffeine made it from the urine to the plant tissues. Is that computing?
Yes.
So it's a very, very small amount, right? That's what I'm trying to explain, is that yes, we were able to,
years?
yes, we were able to measure it, which is pretty exciting. You use this $1 million mass spectrometer in Buffalo, and you can measure these small particles. And what we found, all of those drugs, we could see them that they were there, but they were in extremely small amounts. So now is the time to invest in new solutions. We think that the urine diversion solution is going to cost a lot less than some of these other centralized systems would cost. These are to remove the nutrients, right, to remove nitrogen, because we really need to get nitrogen out of our waterways. And so urine diversion would be about $240 per pound of nitrogen. This was over a 20-year period. That would include the installation and the maintenance and the transport of the urine to a farm and the treatment and everything per person. But centralized sewage treatment costs a whole lot more. These are figures from both Cape Cod and Great Bay where they've done studies. On Cape Cod, you know, they've averaged like $60,000 per household to actually create the whole sewage line and put it all in.
So we have 5 minutes
Ooh.
before we need to break for the hearing.
This is perfect timing then, because really this is our motto here. Buckminster Fuller said, pollution is nothing but the resources we're not harvesting. We allow them to disperse because we are ignorant of their value. So that really speaks to urine. And this is just another slide to kind of give you a little bit more help on who our partners are and who's
So can
working
we
with.
spend this 5 minutes talking about the pilot study?
Yes,
So
let's
great.
do it.
Yeah,
You go.
so we wanted
I'm
to
gonna pass
provide
them out.
this, not quite yet, because
Okay.
we lose focus. So we wanted to provide this context to be able to kind of show and root everybody in, you know, what we're talking about, what the language that we're talking about. So the Village Sanitation Pilot Study, it really came out of these nutrient and environmental incentives, but there's also real incentives monetarily, financially, not just for homeowners, but for a town and a village, and also in terms of development. So we're calling this a Village Sanitation Pilot Study because the Wyndham Regional Commission, on our end of being a regional planning commission, have noticed that I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold, so I'm trying, but I'll keep shouting. What we noticed is that it's a really relevant issue in our historic village centers, that the way in which the community is wanting to develop, there's this barrier or this limits to development because of the septic system, because there are spatial limitations, you know, involved with the septic systems and individual septic systems for a homeowner. But then also there's financial barriers, that these things are costly to maintain. They can be problematic and they're buried, so sometimes we don't even know if there's issues associated with them. So we've been putting a lot of work into consulting with towns on, you know, centralized sewer, water systems, and these things are getting really, really expensive, and we're seeing that there's an acknowledged need for, if not alternatives, just some different way of thinking about these issues or approaching them. So so there's kind of a trifecta that we're looking at here. There's financial incentives for homeowners. There's, for a village or a town, there's definitely, you know, associated desirable development or retention of businesses and homeowners in our village centers. And then, you know, there's this issue of nutrient contamination. So that's what we're looking at. I probably have just like 30 seconds left. So the Village Sanitation Pilot Study is a partnership between Wyndham Regional and Rich Earth, where we're going to, you know, this is a voluntary feasibility study that's totally non-regulatory. But what we want to do is provide a model for the state of Vermont that shows that, you know, you don't just have to get a centralized sewer system, or you don't have to get a centralized water system, that there might be some alternatives. So the partner village that we're working with on this is really going to be a partner with us in researching and kind of exploring what are some viable alternatives that are appropriate for our Vermont village context, and that can provide, you know, again, a model not just for other Vermonters and other Vermont communities, but potentially across New England. So we can get into more details of what might be involved with that.
After the hearing, we can ask questions.
Yeah, sure, and I could, maybe in the meantime, we could pass these out, or if now or later?
Now.
Sure, you could pass them out now. And
Okay.
so Zeke, do you want to introduce the hearing and just mention how long it might or might not take?
It depends how deep into the weeds you want to go, but it could take as little as a few minutes, or it could take a couple of hours.
It's not going to take a couple of hours.
About
10 or 15 minutes.
If you want a short meeting, then I suggest we send Sam Farwell for some sandwiches. I think we'll be able to cut to the chase.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have
But let's start the hearing right now.
Okay. All right. So.
Do we need to disband, do we need to disband as the select board? Nope. It's all part of it.
All part of it. I just have to be adjourned.
I know, you're right.
Copies of the amendment.
We have our copy.
Okay. So. Okay. So, let's recess our meeting.
Oh, so we do need to recess. I'll second that.
Okay? All right, so our public hearing is in session now. This is a public hearing on the proposed amendments to the Dummerston zoning bylaw, which was submitted to the select board on February 9th of 2018. So we're here to listen to any of your comments that you have on these proposed bylaw changes. And if any of you have comments, just raise your hand and we'll listen to them. Okay.
Sam?
I am compelled to make a comment because I got an email from our wonderful zoning administrator today asking me to, so it's completely not my fault, all right?
All right.
For the record.
I'll be the judge of that.
He had noticed an out-of-date statute citation in section 720, which it is not one of the amendments.
Okay, it's not in these amendments. It's not something we're going to deal with tonight.
Well, he asked me to make this comment. That's all I can say, and I said I would.
Okay.
So he wanted to point out that the statute citation in section 720 should be,
page is it on?
which is on page 47, is out of date. They have the legislature changed that statute, so it should now be citing number 4417, section 44173 instead of 44072. And I'll just leave my comment at that.
Does anyone else have any comments? All right, so these were comments, these bylaws are mostly some definitions, a telecommunication ordinance that makes the Dummerston bylaw in compliance with the state statutes on that, or state rules on telecommunications. So, if there are no comments, then I'm going to close the public hearing.
Alan, nothing DRB, you guys are all good with everything on here?
I had not even received those to review, so that's pretty much the planning commission's purview, so.
I think you did, and you made some comments, but it was actually quite a while ago.
Was it?
So
Okay.
we got.
Well, because, yeah,
It takes a
your
takes a
report,
while.
that's why.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Now, do we want to go back to the Richburg so people can ask some
Yeah.
questions? Okay.
So we recess the hearing and reconvene
We
as this,
close the public hearing.
Okay.
I'll take a motion to,
reconvene the select board meeting.
okay?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're back in business.
Good.
Okay, we're going to turn it over to our guests to finish up and take some questions from people.
So I'm curious about this, the study that you're offering. It's a competitive application process, right? So we'll actually be, if we decide that that West Dummerston wants to possibly be studied for free, we are going to have to go up against other villages that might be applying as well. So what are you looking for?
Yeah.
Who's the winning candidate? What are they showing?
Sure.
This was Chris Campany's idea of village competition. I just want to tell you that, because
Yeah,
he and I have
what
been
did it
talking
take
about, we've been talking about it for about 5 years, and he said, he knows that this issue is important in lots of little villages, and we've been looking for villages that were cluster housing along rivers, that we could demonstrate that there could be an impact and see how a village project would unfold.
Yeah, and that question I think really sets up what we had just passed out, which is our calls for letter of intent. So this is sort of part of the competitive process that we're starting with towns and other communities. This is being shared with other communities. If it does provide some, an introduction and some context, and then, and we can describe it, but it does include there what some of the criteria would be for the selected village. And I kind of say that in air quotes because even though it's called the Village Sanitation Pilot Study, we're not necessarily looking for, a village with a capital V, like the village of Newfane. We know that, there are clustered developments kind of historically throughout Vermont, and we're flexible to kind of seeing what the unique needs of the community are and who are the landowners that voluntarily want to be a part of this process. We're obviously, hoping that in order to really have a demonstrable impact and really be a model, that there is kind of a critical mass of homeowners that we're hoping will enroll with this. So that's definitely a consideration and part of the, who the candidate and this ultimately the winning candidate is as part of this study. Right now we're hoping that we get at least 8 homeowners or households that are involved with this. If we get more, that's great. But yeah, we're kind of here to answer more questions about that and to landowners and homeowners right now. And we also will say too that, we're the deadline for submitting these calls for letter of interest to this pilot study is May 25th. But there will be informational sessions afterwards and community sessions afterwards that we plan on hosting within the selected candidate village or neighborhood. So although we kind of hope to be able to identify a certain number of homeowners that would participate in this, we acknowledge that some people might need some time to really sit with this information and digest it and see if it's right for them. So throughout the process, it won't be, very strict. You have to decide by May whether or not you're going to pursue this. There will be opportunities for people to join in if they want to later on.
What's the cost per household?
There is no cost associated with this study. So this is the Village Sanitation Pilot Study, and what it is again is a feasibility study. So we're not anticipating right now all of those wonderful images that Kim and Phoebe had shown earlier of some of the alternatives to toilets and to septic systems. We kind of see those as installation of those systems as an ultimate end goal, but what we're proposing right now is just that we go in and study with the homeowners and gather information from them of their experiences that they're having. We're doing some, GIS mapping of the village and looking at the water quality data that's around, and then we'll create this village-wide feasibility study to see if, having a whole suite or a whole set of neighbors come together as shared resources for each other and install these alternatives to toilets and septic systems, if that's a viable project. If we do decide through the feasibility study that this is great and everybody's on board and we have the support from the town officials, then we would go back and pursue more funding that might ultimately end up in final design of these systems or installation for these systems. But again, we anticipate that there'd be no cost to either the homeowners or the town officials.
So what we would have, one of the products you would have from the feasibility study would be a report. So then the whole community would have this report that says, this is what we found, this is what our GIS mapping tells us, this is what we found in mapping your septic systems. And also we are putting some grant applications together to have individual home site visits by a colleague of ours, so that each home would have the opportunity to see what would a retrofit look like, how would that look, and the report would literally have photos and designs of what this home could select. That's something that usually you have to pay for. In this case, you would get this all for free with the study.
I'm just trying to understand your glide path for time, so, and the logistical platform, how you implement this into, because you're going to be implementing it into the homes, correct? The alternative.
This is the feasibility study.
No, again, this is
Right,
a feasibility.
now
So,
it's a
but does it
feasibility
lead into
study.
that, I guess, is the
That's our
question?
that's our
That's
intent.
open-ended, okay,
And
got it.
that's why this is a competitive process,
Got
and because we're really searching for the right candidate village, because ultimately, I think it would be a really great success for this partnership, but also the candidate village, if we can say like, look, we did this and we implemented these things, and what a benefit to not just the town and the village center, but these homeowners. So we do want to have this be a good fit, because we do ultimately want to go there.
Because once you invest that, you want to be able to
Sure.
move on to the next phase.
But we're also not, we don't want to make any promises that we can't keep, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. This is why there's no precedent for this work. We are making it up kind of right now. So there's the spirit of pioneering this work. Yeah,
I'll just say I did have a conversation this morning for about an hour and a half with regulators and a whole team out in Michigan who have a similar project on a lake out there, and a foundation and group of people out there who are looking at doing something very similar to that. And these are our partners in the National Science Foundation funding. You know, we're looking at kind of trying to find a place to go deep in Vermont and a place to go deep in Michigan, and then we will have some solutions that are actually going to be something that, you know, it can be looked at across the nation, you know, as long as things go well.
Yeah, Alex Wilson, I live just up the road. I wanted to point out that there's another significant benefit to this type of nutrient diversion that's particularly relevant to a village. And there's an engineer in Norwich, he may not still be there, but he was the leading EPA guy who designed on-site wastewater systems and developed a manual for that. And I did an article some years back now and interviewed him, and he told me that he could virtually guarantee that any relatively high-density New England village had levels of nitrate pollution in their groundwater, you know, the water they're pumping up from their wells, that would exceed the federal standards for nitrate pollution, you know, 10 milligrams per liter. And, you know, so the goal of a project like this and diverting urine, one of the goals, it's not just about protecting surface waters in the West River, it's about protecting our drinking water when we pull water out of the ground. And, you know, I can't be sure of the testing here, you know, in the village, what the nitrate levels are, but in general, throughout New England, today's nitrate levels exceed the federal standards dramatically. And, you know, the long-term benefit of this would be safer drinking water for us. And incidentally, the health effects of high nitrate levels are, you might have heard blue baby syndrome. There's a complicated medical name for that syndrome, but it's nitrate pollution that, you know, affects, you know, infants very significantly.
Thanks for pointing that out, Alex. Appreciate that.
some questions here?
Peter Thurl, I live over in the east side of town. I'm wondering, I know there are other towns that are interested in this project as well, and since it is just a feasibility study, what would it take to be able to say yes to more than one town?
That'd be so nice. I mean, funds, it's really funds. I mean, we have a research institute and a public entity that's, tax funded. So we're just strapped for staff time and funding. And as it is to ensure that this project is at no cost to either the town or the community or to the homeowners, we're already kind of dipping into the core funding that we have, the little core funding that we have. But then also we've already started applying to one grant, and we're planning on, applying to more grants in the future so that we can ensure that we have staff time to support just this. And it's pretty lean out there, so that's how we can ensure that it makes it work. It'd be great. I mean,
We
I would
want
love
to do
to
it
more,
really
but-
well in one place first. If it works really well in one place, then replication is easy, but we want to get it right.
Just for your, go ahead, Calvin. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm a little nervous about this competitive nature of this thing, so I wanted some facts about it. Roughly how many candidates would there be?
Candidates that are applying to
Yes.
this? Well,
Just a number.
there
Ten?
could be 20, how many are in the county? We're really focusing on the Wyndham County, Wyndham region. There's 20 plus towns, 27 towns.
I was looking for a number.
Yeah, she said 27.
Yeah, 27.
You said 27? Okay.
There could be,
Okay,
but right
that
now we
depends.
have three serious
and now,
candidates.
You've used the term winning candidate several times, but I could never hear whether there was an S on the end of the word candidate.
No, I said selected candidate, one, singular. Yeah.
It is singular.
Yes, it is
Just
singular.
one, okay.
Yeah.
So 1 out of 27. Odds are pretty
But not
tough.
all 27 are going to be interested in this. She
Okay.
said there are 3 that are highly interested.
Are we highly
So you
interested?
haven't.
Not yet. Well, I mean, we don't know.
So
There was just one question in the back that was, yeah.
Yeah, Brenda Davis, I live on the east side. But that point that the gentleman made down there, I think is really important. Are you gonna be checking the well water so that you can kind of correlate if you do the study and you can say, yeah, there was high or not high? Because I think that's really important. It would be an incentive, it seems.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that this process is actually kind of indicative of what we would do when we begin the relationship of really pursuing a feasibility study and pursuing this research with the village. So if it comes out in these preliminary meetings that we would have with the participating homeowners that, you know, well water, and that we are interested in what is in our well water, we want to test it, we can go back as part of this feasibility study, and we're kind of embedding within the grants that we're applying for to be able to have funding flexibilities where we can test soil or water or different things like that. And we can kind of work with the community that way to identify these priority areas and do that. You know, to be honest, I don't think that we had originally had conversations about testing well water, but I'm kind of looking to Phoebe and Kim
Yeah,
here,
we
and I
haven't
think
talked
it
about
would
that, but we
be.
have talked about testing the septic itself before and after with nutrients. They've done a little bit of this in Cape Cod. We have some other colleagues that work in this kind of arena to lean on about some of the design of what we want to test for sure and how to, you know, how to do that. But yeah, there's a lot of openness here to what we
I'm
can
just
do.
thinking that
We're
people
going
are
to keep
be more
writing grants
interested
so
when
that we
it
can try to
directly
get
affects
more.
their drinking water. If they can, you can prove that, you know, I'd be like, sign me up if I'm not drinking bad water.
Yep.
So it seems to me that one of the things that you're asking for the village who is the candidate for this pilot study is for people to open their homes to you and really allow you into what is sort of an intimate space and the way they manage their intimate activities. And so some people have nervousness around you doing testing on different things and what the state might then learn about their house and their wastewater system. So can you talk a little bit about the data that you would be collecting and what would happen to that?
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, Geraldine. And first and foremost, we do want to acknowledge that this is intimate and that you know, I can totally appreciate how there might be some privacy concerns embedded within this project as well. The Wyndham Regional Commission, we are a political subdivision of the state of Vermont, but ultimately what we do is we serve our towns and we serve our communities, and we're absolutely non-regulatory in any way. From the start of this project, it's always been kind of said very clearly that there would be no regulation or enforcement involved with this project. And although, you know, it does involve kind of letting the partners in and doing in-person surveys, maybe some testing here and there. So, you know, there is an element of participation, but we would go and just take measures to protect the privacy of these homeowners and make sure that if there is some sensitive information that isn't, you know, is inappropriate to be publicly shared, we would mask that. And still, you know, and it's kind of a tricky balance because if we do move through for implementation, we want to be able to have numbers and data that really makes the case for future grant funding that might lead towards implementation or final design, but we would protect that information. And we would also partner directly with A&R and loop them in with this process to their waste management division. Because I think they're really interested in the outcomes of this project too. So we kind of say, we're doing this is how we're doing it, and just get out in front of any issues and just say, this is how we're going to be protecting these homeowners. I think there are I can speak from A&R's end that regulation and enforcement is their last resort. They never want to do it. It tends to be expensive and it's undesirable for everybody. So they want to see these proactive solutions. So we would kind of work with them and get ahead of any issues.
And so the data would be aggregate data, not individual household data. It would all be put together, so it's not obvious, necessarily.
Yeah.
I just want to beat that point into the ground to give an example of if I'm a participating homeowner, and you come and interview me and you say, well, how old is your septic system? And I say, there's no record, I have no idea. And then you say, well, do you have a leach field? And I say, I don't even know. That information is sealed. Even though you're partnering with A&R, that information does not get anywhere near them. And even if it did, they wouldn't care because that's not what they're working on.
Yeah,
But it's not,
it's not.
to be clear.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Sam.
I suppose what leads to the next question is whether or not all of these participating households have to be physically near each other, or if there's two people here in the village that are interested, and there's at least one person from Miller Road and perhaps one person from Route 5 or 2, then, you know, how is that accommodated? Or is it accommodated?
Within reason, and we thought about that, and we weren't able to really lay down some geographic parameters because each of the candidate villages are going to be really different. And part of what we're asking for in these letters of intent is a map and showing where, you know, maybe it's a little cluster of 3 households here and one here and one here. But it doesn't really make sense. It is called the Village Sanitation Pilot Study because we are looking for that cluster development, yeah. So we do want to see a logical geographic pattern.
Okay.
That's
All right.
vague, but we're willing to work, again, we're really willing to work with the neighborhoods, with the communities, if there are interested homeowners that aren't, you know, kind of far away, you know, maybe there are ways where they can kind of learn from this experience and participate in it, but we do want to have it really be kind of at this village scale because that's what makes sense to the issues that are relevant to our Vermont communities.
I'll also add, for instance, unlike my buddy here, I know exactly how old my septic tank is, although I didn't have it installed. I certainly know how old the leach field is because the Clarks did it, and I also know how the water tests because we had it officially done when we bought the house, and I followed up personally just after 10 years. So, you know, I think I would be an excellent candidate.
Worth the 5-mile drive.
What's that?
I mean, it's worth pointing out that you know, the Rich Earth Institute already works with many dozens of people around the area, so you don't have to be part of a village study to partner with Rich Earth Institute. I mean, we've provided urine, you know, from our place here already, so it's something you can already do.
Right.
You know, I think the study here is looking for a place where there's a density of houses, and you know, you can get sort of aggregate data.
So I'm downhill of several village properties and kind of the last line before the river, and so I would be interested in this project.
All sitting in a row.
And I just wanted to reiterate the same thought. I didn't want to actually put my friend and neighbor Goododarva on the spot, or my sister, publicly, but here I go. Because, I mean, we're just sort of in a perfect line with our septics and our wells right down the slope to the river and abutting property. So it would be very interesting to study that particular density.
When you drive across this road with that in your eyes, when you know you can think about all different kinds of things when you come up and down this little space. But when we first did it, we were like, wow, this is a perfect, you know, like, look, there's the water, there's the river, there's the, wow, you know, it's just really, this is a cluster village for sure.
And I'm being texted to dinner, so I can go, but sign us up.
Yeah, I'd like to just speak to the reasons why I think we're a great candidate. And I'm sorry there aren't a few more households from the village here tonight, but you know, your PowerPoint was impressive, and it speaks to what excites you and what your vision is. It doesn't necessarily speak to what is on our minds, which may be a lot more mundane. It's just simply the fact that we've got to maintain our septic systems, and we're very close together, and they're very expensive, and we might run into isolation areas. So that's what I think is the real driver for us. There may be some households that simply are up against a wall. I mean, they really won't be able to put in a new septic system when the time comes. There's one house in the village now that doesn't have one. I don't know if that's simply because the owner doesn't have the money to put one in that would meet the regulations. It was condemned and since then hasn't had a septic system. There are 2 houses that have newer systems, but they have to pump up to the top of the hill to get their waste into a leach field where there's space. So I see us as a village that is in need of help in dealing with its waste. The other kind of elephant in the room here is that this project and the Rich Earth Institute is focusing on urine diversion. That's great, but that doesn't entirely solve our septic system problem. We'd still have a septic system, and the state would still view it as, a wastewater. So, then that leads to the composting toilet, and so, and that's quite a change to our whole lifestyle, and that's a bigger. Well, that's, I feel somewhat the same way, but it's a bigger sell and might take a little more time, but it's a first step, and it's frankly probably an easier pill to swallow than the total cost of a municipal wastewater system. You shared with me the numbers that you had for Algiers, which was back in 1991. It was $776,000 to put in a system that doesn't even have treatment. That's just pumping over to Brattleboro.
Yeah.
I don't know how many households that's serving. It might be 100 or 200 even, but still.
Yeah, and that was, on the range of things, that was relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
Because it connected to Brattleboro's system.
Right,
So this
it's
would be
just
an
a pumping.
isolated system. And,
Right,
yeah.
but, that could be one solution that we'd look at, where we'd have a system that then had a collection station, I guess, where we had trucks would be hauling our waste away, but that would still, I don't think we could even afford that. Especially if the rest of the town wasn't willing to pitch in. I mean, if it was just our 35 households. And it's never gonna be more than 35 households because we can't expand. So I think those are the reasons why we've got to do something. And we might as well get a free pilot study that we don't have to even follow the recommendations. There's no strings attached. So why would we say no? That's.
I just want to also say that if you are interested in doing it and you're all, there's a cluster group of people that say, yes, let's do this, it would be very helpful to the team that's doing this to have a point person. We're looking for one point person. We have that in some of the other villages already, and they're the ones that are the one person who emails us and asks us more questions and that sort of thing.
Okay, so it's going to require a little bit of
Conversation.
Community organizing here.
Definitely.
So, like, I have a septic tank, and I finally realized, I'm supposed to suck that thing out. I haven't had any problems, so I said, geesh, I better do it before I do, and the guy said it was great. He said it was even half full, it was perfect, so it must be running pretty well, I figured. But, so, and I don't pay much, it's just happening, and unless my well is contaminated or I'm contaminating the water, my incentive financially is really just to do nothing. So what would it cost if I did say, well, I want to be a good Samaritan and I'm going to do this? I got to have a tanker come now and take my stuff away on a daily basis. That's a cost. We don't pay water, we don't pay sewer in Dummerston, we don't have that expense. Now we're going to add that expense. What is that going to cost? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what extent?
Well, when the sewer truck comes to get your urine and transports it to somebody else,
We don't have.
do
a
they
cost
buy
on
it from
that.
you?
At this point, the truck is not buying it. I have people call.
She's
I have
good.
people call me all around the country all the time asking me. People call and say, "Can I send you my urine from Ohio?" And I say, "Keep it there." And no, we don't have everybody out there. It happens all the time, and people want to know if we'll pay for the urine. And that it's such a dilute substance, and the nutrients, the concentration of the nutrients is so small. And it takes 1,000 gallons to fertilize 1 acre of hay. So it's not, our farmers really love getting it, but they could probably buy pellet fertilizer for very little. So the cost savings on this is definitely in the wastewater side.
But do you know what it costs to have weekly, how many people?
It doesn't, if you have a tank that's allowed, twice a year you need.
Just twice a year.
Yeah, it's not a very, it's hard to think about this, but you have between 100 and 150 gallons of urine per person per year.
Right.
And if you work somewhere else and you don't have that much going into your own home system. So I don't have an answer for you that on how much that would cost over time, but it's, my tank for 270, I save 12,800 gallons of water a year by not having a flush toilet, And that translates on my Brattleboro water bill to $130 a year. So that's about what I would pay to have it pumped out twice a year.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that in terms of like a septic. So I have a septic, I live in Westminster, and I don't know exactly what I'm saving, but to not be putting, not to be flushing and using the pump and the electricity of that is also cost savings too. So if you think about that.
Kim, when you mentioned that you have a tank and you mentioned 275, I thought, gosh, that sounds like a submerged oil tank. What,
Just like that.
is it
I mean, if you
the
think-
same kind of tank?
Well, it's a plastic tote. We call them totes. They're in a cage or
Same
metal
thing they
cage.
collect sap in.
Exactly, they're exactly what you collect.
Oh,
sap.
it's like the one at the depot.
It's just
Yes.
like the one at the
Yeah.
depot.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, and so, and it doesn't freeze in the winter, which is so cool to figure out because we had a really, really cold winter, way below zero, and we have it next to the house and we have it insulated under the ground, but still accessible. And when it doesn't freeze, that means that even if it fills up in, January 12th or something and it's 0 or 10 below, you can still have it pumped out. Yeah, it takes about 6 to 8 months for our family, depending how many guests we have and stuff, to fill it. A household of 3. Yeah.
Sam mentioned that what he thought was the driving force behind getting involved in this or not. But I was going to think there was something else, one more driving force. I would think that if everybody knew what the nitrate level in their own drinking water was, they might be really moving in this direction very quickly.
For this village, it might be an important, test to do.
Does anybody here know the nitrate concentration in their drinking water?
I would if I had it memorized, but I have it at home.
Yeah, I got it tested.
So, maybe last question or so, or what should be the process? People have forms that they can fill out if they want to get involved. What's the next step for everyone here? What is that?
Yeah, thank you. The next steps would really be to put together the calls for letter of intent. So in this that you got, there's the last, it starts on the 3rd of 4 pages. It's called submittal, and there's just a list of things that we're asking to see in the letters of intent for this project. So I think the big lift for the community would be to start to have the conversation amongst yourselves whether or not you would like to be part of this project, and to whoever the point person might be, if there is one person or a household that kind of rises to the top that's able to communicate with us, work with that person to just say that you're interested. And again, it's non-committing at this point. You can just say like, I'm interested, but I want to learn more. That's good information for us too. Say, forget it, we love this, we definitely want to do it. That's great. I think we're kind of interested in just the general feedback. So yeah, there's some community organizing, I would say, at this point, and it's why we had the deadline be at the end of May, so that town folks can have enough time. Maybe there's another meeting or two, amongst yourselves to decide that. Did that answer the question? That's also vague because it's so unique to each community that we're talking with and working with. So.
Okay, so one more question. Go
It
ahead.
sounds a lot like, and just reading this, it still does involve the select board and planning commission.
Right, I was going to speak to that, thanks.
Yeah,
So, as they've mentioned, this is really, the next step is sort of community organizing. They definitely want the support of the select board, and this is an ongoing process. I'd like to step forward as the select board member that would be willing to attend any community gathering of interested people, to keep the select board informed and to keep whatever community organizing happens, keep the select board informed of, sort of the process going on. So I'll step forward to be the select board point person, but we don't need to, the select board doesn't need to do anything formal. I think at a certain point, if there is a really strong village group and the select board has information, I'll bring it back and we can offer our support in any more formal way that's necessary, at that time. But
Yeah, and just to speak to that a little bit, it's why we only have signatures required at this point from a planning commission and from the select board, the chairs of both respectively, because we understand that there will be some planning commissions that really want to be cued into this process. There's some select boards that might really want to get involved. And then there's some that say, like, we've got way too much going on. Sure, but we can't deal with that. So this is just our way of being flexible with the needs of the communities, and where the different communities are at. But of course, we just wanted to move forward with just being sure that the planning commission and the select boards are at least aware of the process, and whatever level of involvement that they want, we're open to all of it, and we can be flexible.
Great.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Well,
I have a question for you guys.
Okay. Okay.
You're before you go.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Before you move on to your next agenda item, please. My question, if I can ask it. Yeah, I just have a question for the board. Is there anyone on the select board who would not give the chair the authority to sign a letter, an application? I mean, does anyone who has reservations about an application if West Dummerston organizes itself to do that?
I talked about it saying that I keep this going on, but the fact is, they really need to identify the geographic area, and then there's 25 households along this street, and there's 4 people up here. So I think before I'm going to do that, it's going to have to have a much. I love the interest of the town, but if it's focused on this one area, there's very little representation right now of the area, the focus area.
Right.
And until I see more interest from that specific group of people, then I just have to see where the interest lies there. So I would not push forward until we.
She mentioned
what's the area?
households.
Yeah, what's the area?
Let me rephrase the question.
Let's get those people, if they're interested. And then the next one is, of those 25, 4 people here, how many do they need to make it a worthwhile?
Yeah, well, they're asking for 8, and they'd love to have more.
Yeah.
That's what's in the application. But my question is, I think it got misconstrued. I don't want to take the initiative to pull people together and get at least 8 who are gung-ho if there's anyone on the board who's going to have reservations about us saying, hey, we want to make an application, because we need your signature. You see what I'm saying? I don't want you to...
I think they just want us to rubber stamp it.
Well, but I
And
think
that's what we
Sam's
would
question
need.
is a good one. If there was someone on the select board that was already totally against it, why did they put their...
No, it's, people want to volunteer to join this effort, then fine. I have no problem.
Yeah, okay, I don't either.
Yeah. If there's 8 households along the street, or however they identify it, it's just West Street, or, if it's, obviously it'll be the loop down by the fire station. I mean, they really need to think through this geographic piece a little more if they're trying to get like water samples and things like that. And then get those people, if you get 8, I don't have a problem with it. I don't want, what I don't want to see is people from not that area
But it could be anybody from West Street.
influencing.
It doesn't need to be 8 contiguous households.
No, but I think, so is it from Route 30 to Route 30 along West Street?
Yeah.
8 houses?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
great, that's fine. If they want to do that.
I think that would position you well, 8 houses somewhere along West Street.
Yeah. So I don't think you have to worry about us.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna find more than 8 houses, is my
Well,
guess.
That's the big if, but I wanted to check with the select board.
Yeah,
before
I think it's a
start
fair
putting
question.
whole lot of
Yeah.
work into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Sam, are you in this location?
Good, all right, let's
All right,
finish up
let's
our
go.
meeting.
But I want to know where you got 35 from. I can't count 35.
I got 35. I just got the ones that counted.
I must be like missing something when I do it.
The ones that are tucked behind other houses.
I know, he grew up here, he should know, he was playing, or he was cutting school, you know, like, he knows all the backyard.
All right.
I heard that story.
Okay, so, all right, back to business. We've got nothing under correspondence for discussion and or action. Just done our pilot study. Unfinished business, appointments and reappointments. We've appointed a lister. We had a letter from the Susan Kern from the library trustees. They would like to appoint Nicole Price and Harold Newell to serve as trustees until town meeting when they would run.
Do we want to, for the sake of, I think we learned last time, do we want to like combine all these things
Oh, right.
into one?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
It would
Okay.
be nice.
So,
Yeah.
All right, so we,
So we have the farmland committee,
okay,
one, we could, and then we combine that with the appointment for the library?
sure,
I'll make a motion.
okay.
and would you, can you just add the DRB?
Sure.
Can I friendly amend the DRB or?
Okay.
So for the DRB, you get Alan has for 3 years again, Alan Bean, Patty Wallier for 3 years again, Chad Farnham, 1 year alternate, Jennifer Sargent, 1 year alternate. Okay, just go with the cemetery committee. Do you want all these names, Maria? Or can you
No,
just
I
go-
got them all right
Okay.
here.
So the cemetery committee, with the exception of Hugh Worden, he's not going back on it. But the other members are all going back on it. So you have Lee Chamberlain.
Where's the cemetery? Oh, right here, okay. So you got all of them?
Yep. So you got
Except
Lee,
Hugh.
Terry, Janice, Shorty, Lewis.
Yep.
Vermont Community Development, Jack Lilly. And I'm just gonna say Jack Maddox. I haven't got a hold of him yet.
Yeah,
but
he's,
we're gonna put him.
right, I
Okay, yep.
think that's the way to go.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's
Okay.
all mine.
Okay, the farmland committee, do you
The
want?
farmland committee,
Okay.
want me to read off the names, or? There we go. Vern Grubinger, Nelson Gilson, Diana Goodwin, Jack Mannix, Reed Miller, and Elizabeth Wood.
And I'm gonna add Planning Commission, Beverly Tier. And the Recreation Board, Keith Marshall and Mae Jenks.
Okay, for senior solutions, I'm going to add Ruth Barton. And, of course, library trustees, Nicole Price and Harold Newell. Okay, and Connecticut River Joint Commission, Dan Marks.
And the social services committee,
They were
We
good.
we are,
And the only one that
missing
I have,
anybody?
Emergency Management Director.
Right, that's an, we're going to have a little meeting, just a chat.
Okay. Yep, I think that was it. Okay.
All right,
Good?
I'll second the motion, how's that?
great,
Okay. Any discussion?
we're lucky.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was nice that people are so eager.
Yep. Well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Let's see, other is, oh, okay, so, the bylaws. We received no public comments, so
I would move that we approve the new edits, changes, proposed amendments to the zoning bylaws.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, well, geez, we're running out of things on the list. We're gonna have to go home unless we think of some more things. Is there any other business?
Well, I just wanted to say that Rachel and I went up to the Select Board Institute.
That'd be good to hear.
Yeah, and there were about 100 people at Lake Maury in Fairleigh. And one of the feelings I came away with was being very proud of our town. When you meet with other select board members and hear what's going on in other towns and people's challenges, I feel like we have a really well-run town. And it takes everybody, the town office staff, the road crew and foreman, the select board, the planning commission, the DRB, you know, just everybody. And I feel like VLCT is such a great support, and we're in sync with them and using them and understanding the rules and protocols, and all of those things really help. So I gotta really, you know, I felt very proud of our town.
I agree. Yeah, it was a great opportunity to, just as a new select board member, to really just sort of lay the foundation for how select boards operate and what our roles and responsibilities are. So it was well timed. And it was nice to go with Geraldine too, just to have some perspective from someone who's been on the board for a while. So I'm still digesting most of the information. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in. Yeah.
Right.
Has everybody done that before? Okay. Have you, Maria? Yeah, if you have a chance, I do recommend it. Yeah. You learn a lot.
Okay, good, I'm glad you went. Any other business? Okay, well, it was very nice. Thank you for letting us use this beautiful building.
Yeah,
this
thanks,
evening.
Gene.
Okay.
I like it over here.
Nice to have you.
I think she was going to invite us over for.
Oh, yeah, a couple of beers or
Yeah.
So
It's a short walk. We should adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.